The sun had barely begun to rise over the cracked, dusty fields of Miller's farm, yet John Miller was already wide awake, his hands rough and calloused from decades of toil. For weeks, he had been watching his dwindling savings like a hawk, praying for some miracle to pull him back from the edge. That morning, however, something entirely unexpected appeared, something that would change everything. It started with whispers in the town. People spoke in hushed tones about a cream-colored horse that had been seen wandering along the old fence lines, silent, almost ghostly. No one knew where it came from. No one had claimed it. And yet, it moved with a strange intelligence, as if it understood the world better than the humans who dared to stare. John had never been a man to chase myths. He was practical, grounded, a man who trusted sweat and effort more than luck or legends. But as he saw the horse pacing along the edge of his property, its mane shimmering like spun gold in the dawn light, something inside him stirred. The horse's eyes, large, dark, and impossibly expressive, seemed to lock onto his soul. They were eyes that told stories of freedom, of battles fought silently in the night, of trust broken and carefully rebuilt. "Where did you come from, friend?" John whispered, his voice trembling more than he intended. He took a cautious step forward. The horse didn't flinch, yet it didn't approach either. It was a puzzle wrapped in beauty, a living enigma, and it held him in its gaze as though it were weighing his worth. He knew it was risky. He had barely enough money to cover the winter feed and the repairs on the barn roof. Yet, against every instinct of reason, he found himself walking back to his truck. His heart pounded, not just from fear of losing the little money he had left, but from the impossible hope that perhaps, just perhaps, this horse could be the answer to everything. The deal wasn't simple. The horse had been left at a small, neglected stable on the edge of town, a place most people avoided. The caretaker, a grizzled man named Sam, warned John. "It's not for sale, and if it were, you wouldn't be ready for it," Sam said, shaking his head. But John had made up his mind. He counted his last savings, every dollar, and handed it over, feeling both exhilaration and terror in the same heartbeat. As John led the horse back to his farm, he noticed the subtle details that others had overlooked. Its ears flicked at the slightest sound. Its nostrils flared, taking in the scents of the earth, of grass, of unknown danger. The horse walked beside him as if it were both judging and testing him. And in that moment, John realized this was not just any horse. It was a soul that demanded respect, patience, and understanding. The first night was the hardest. The horse refused to enter the barn. It stood at the edge of the field, ears pinned back, muscles tense. John tried to coax it with oats, with gentle words, even with the faintest melodies hummed from his childhood. But nothing worked. The horse would not move. He could feel the strain in its body, the weight of years of fear and mistrust. Every sound of the night, the distant caw of a crow, the snap of a twig, made it shudder. And then, when John's exhaustion nearly took him to the ground, a faint whinny cut through the darkness. Not fear, not panic, but something else, a tentative recognition. The horse had sensed something in John, something human and raw. John froze, heart hammering. He slowly stepped forward, hands open, and whispered, "I'm not here to hurt you. I just want to help." Hours passed like this, the two of them locked in a silent, fragile truce. John began to understand the horse's language, not words, but subtle shifts, the tiniest of glances, the flick of an ear, a tense breath. Each movement told a story, survival, pain, mistrust. And each understanding built a bridge between them. By morning, the horse finally moved. Not into the barn, not fully into trust, but it allowed John to lead it a few steps closer. And in that motion, John felt a spark of hope he hadn't known in years. This was more than a horse. This was a test of his own courage, of his patience, and of his belief in miracles. John's mind raced with possibilities. Could this horse help him rebuild his farm? Could it bring life back to a place that had been silent for too long? Could it teach him something about resilience that he had forgotten? But for now, those questions were secondary. The immediate challenge was simple and terrifying. Earn the trust of this creature, one day, one step at a time. He spent that day working alongside the horse, letting it graze while he repaired a broken fence post, speaking softly all the while. The horse watched, studied, occasionally taking a tentative step closer. Every inch gained was a victory, and John felt it like a rush of wind through his chest. Then, just as he was beginning to relax, a sudden noise from the neighboring field startled the horse. It bolted, hooves pounding the earth, eyes wide with fear. John ran, shouting, his voice raw and desperate. This was the moment he feared, the moment every story about wild horses warned about. And yet, as he reached out, the horse skidded to a stop mere feet from the edge of the stream that bordered the farm. It looked back at him, breath ragged, muscles coiled. And then, slowly, it trotted back toward him. John's heart nearly burst. It was a small victory, yes, but one that spoke volumes. The horse was not broken, but cautious. It was not wild, but wary. It was not his yet, but it was beginning to see him as someone who could be trusted. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of amber and rose, John sat on the fence, watching the cream horse graze nearby. He whispered into the fading light, "Tomorrow we try again." And in the silent understanding that passed between them, he realized that sometimes the greatest risks were not about money or land, but about opening one's heart to the unknown. And as you watch this story unfold, if you feel a spark of hope or wonder, remember to share it with someone else, because sometimes a story like this deserves to inspire more than just one heart. The morning air was crisp, carrying the scent of wet earth and the faint sweetness of wildflowers growing at the edges of the field. John woke before dawn, his muscles sore but his determination unwavering. The cream horse was already awake, standing tall in the dewy grass, ears twitching with a mixture of curiosity and wariness. Its coat gleamed like ivory in the early light, and for a moment, John simply watched it breathe, letting the quiet speak between them. Yesterday had been a small victory, but today promised new challenges. John knew that patience alone wouldn't be enough. The horse had to learn that he wasn't a threat, that he could provide safety and comfort. Every movement he made had to be deliberate, every word gentle. Even the slightest misstep could undo progress earned with such painstaking care. He approached slowly, keeping his shadow behind him, voice soft, almost a whisper. "Good morning," he said. The horse lifted its head, nostrils flaring, eyes alert. For a heartbeat, it seemed poised to bolt again, yet it remained, watching him. Encouraged, John slowly offered a handful of oats, letting the horse come to him on its own terms. Step by step, the distance between them closed, until finally, the horse accepted the food. But trust was a fragile thing, as John knew all too well. That afternoon, a sudden thunderstorm rolled in, black clouds swallowing the sky. Lightning flashed, and the first peal of thunder shook the ground. The horse froze, panic flashing in its eyes. John sprinted into the storm, rain soaking him to the bone, shouting reassurances. He reached the horse just as it tried to bolt, gripping its mane to steady it. Its muscles trembled, not just from fear but from the raw energy of survival. "You're safe," John whispered, voice barely audible over the storm. "I've got you." It took minutes of calm persistence, for the horse to relax enough to stand quietly beside him. By the time the storm passed, the bond between them had deepened in ways words could not capture. John realized something profound. The horse wasn't just wary of strangers, it was wary of the world itself. And if he could teach it that safety existed, that trust could be earned, perhaps it could teach him something he had forgotten, that even in desperation, hope could still bloom. The following days were a delicate dance. John rebuilt a small paddock, repaired fences, and stocked fresh water. Each task was punctuated by moments of quiet observation, as the horse studied him from a distance, assessing his intentions, learning his rhythms. John began to notice subtleties, the way the horse's ears flicked toward approaching sounds, the slight arch of its neck when it sensed potential danger, the flicker of curiosity when he whistled a soft tune. And yet, progress was uneven. Some mornings, the horse would come willingly to him, nudging his hand, sniffing the oats with tentative trust. Other times, it would retreat to the farthest corner of the field, muscles taut, eyes wary. Each setback cut deeper than any financial worry he had ever faced. He felt the weight of failure pressing on him, yet he refused to turn back. Every flicker of acknowledgement from the horse became a victory, a reminder that connection was possible even with the most guarded of hearts. Then came the night of the broken fence. John had been fixing a loose post, and the horse, curious and restless, nudged the gate open. By the time John realized, the cream horse had slipped into the neighboring fields, its hooves pounding the soft earth as it vanished into the shadows. Panic surged through him. He grabbed a flashlight and ran, calling its name into the night. Each second felt like an eternity, each rustle of leaves a potential heartbreak. When he finally found the horse by the creek, it was drinking calmly, as if nothing had happened. Relief washed over him, but it was quickly replaced by a sense of awe. The horse had tested its boundaries, but it had not run far. It had returned, not because of coercion, but because it had chosen to. That small choice, that simple act, marked a turning point. Trust was no longer unilateral, it was becoming a shared understanding. The next week brought an unexpected visitor, Emily, John's childhood friend and former riding instructor. She had heard rumors of the cream horse and wanted to see it for herself. Emily had a keen eye for equine behavior, and as she approached, she immediately noticed what John had learned through intuition. This horse was no ordinary animal. Its silence wasn't just mystery, it was intelligence. Its cautious movements weren't fear alone, they were awareness honed by unknown trials. "John," she said, kneeling beside the horse while it grazed, "this one, it's remarkable. Look at the way it studies you. It's learning, but it's also teaching." Her words struck him. The horse wasn't just a challenge, it was a mirror. Its reactions reflected his own patience, his own fears, his own capacity to care. Over the next few days, Emily helped John with training techniques that encouraged gentle leadership without coercion. They introduced simple routines, feeding schedules, soft vocal commands, light grooming. Each day, the horse grew more comfortable in their presence, yet there was still an air of mystery about it, a depth that hinted at a history far beyond John's understanding. And then, one quiet evening as the sun dipped low and painted the fields in shades of gold, the horse did something unexpected. It walked toward John, nuzzled his shoulder, and lowered its head in a gesture of pure trust. John felt a lump in his throat, tears threatening to spill. He knelt, stroking the horse's mane, whispering words he hadn't spoken in years. "You're safe now. I promise." That night, as he lay in his small farmhouse, John reflected on the journey so far. Every risk, every sleepless night, every dollar spent had been worth it, not for the farm, not for the money, but for the bond forming between a man who had nearly lost hope and a horse that had walked through shadows to find it. And yet, the story was far from over. Something about the horse remained elusive. Its past, its origin, the reason for its silent, almost otherworldly demeanor, these questions lingered in John's mind. He felt that understanding the horse fully would require more than patience. It would require courage, empathy, and perhaps a willingness to confront the unknown dangers that life still held. As you watch this story unfold, notice how the smallest victories, moments of connection, trust, and understanding, carry the greatest weight. If you feel the same awe and wonder that John does, consider sharing this story. Sometimes, a story about courage and compassion can inspire more hearts than 1,000 words ever could. Days turned into weeks, and the farm slowly transformed. The once cracked fences were sturdy, the barn tidy, and the fields alive with the soft rustle of grass and the quiet energy of life. Yet, despite this outward stability, John felt the invisible thread of tension stretching tighter every day. The cream horse, majestic, silent, almost spectral, had begun to show glimpses of its past, hints of something untold, and the more he tried to understand, the more elusive it became. It started with sudden flinches. The horse would rear at shadows, ears flat against its head, nostrils flaring. Sometimes it would bolt at distant sounds no human could hear, muscles coiling like springs. John noticed scars on its legs, faint but telling, and one small, jagged mark near its flank. His heart ached every time he saw them. Whoever, or whatever, had come before had left their mark on this creature, and now John realized that he wasn't just healing a horse, he was witnessing a soul battered by the past. Emily watched closely, her voice calm but pointed. John, it's more than fear. This horse, it's been through something no one can explain. You can't just train it like any other horse. You have to earn its full trust, and even then, you might only scratch the surface. Her words struck him like a bolt of truth. This horse wasn't simply wild. It carried stories in its silence, secrets that John felt but could not yet name. The first major test came unexpectedly. A young colt from a neighboring farm had escaped into John's property. The cream horse's ears pricked, eyes widening with recognition, or was it anger? The two horses circled each other, nostrils flaring, hooves scraping the earth. The cream horse let out a low, throaty whinny, one that John had never heard before, a sound that carried raw authority, ancient and commanding. The colt backed away, unsure, while John froze, struck by awe. That night, as the storm of adrenaline settled in both horses, John sat quietly by the paddock. He realized something profound. This horse was not merely defensive, it was protective, strategic. Its silence had been a shield, a way to observe, to survive. And now, under his care, it was beginning to reveal its true power, not in aggression, but in intelligence, in presence. But with power came unpredictability. One afternoon, a traveling salesman came to the farm, unaware of the horse's temperament. He laughed at John's careful routines, joking about the horse as a pretty toy. At first, the horse merely observed, ears flicking. But when the man stepped too close, the cream horse's head snapped up, nostrils flaring, muscles tensing. A single sharp whinny sent the intruder stumbling backward, wide-eyed and breathless. John's stomach sank. He had underestimated the animal's instincts. "I'm sorry," he whispered, heart hammering. "I didn't expect that." The horse lowered its head, nostrils softening, eyes meeting his with quiet understanding. It was as if it were saying, "I trust you, but I will not tolerate disrespect." John felt a surge of awe. This was no ordinary horse. This was a guardian, a silent force of nature who had chosen him, but only on its own terms. Then came the night that changed everything. John was awoken by a sound, a faint rustling near the barn. He grabbed a lantern and crept outside, heart pounding. The cream horse was gone. Panic gripped him, but he didn't run blindly. He followed hoofprints into the darkness, across fields slick with dew. And there, in the shadows, he found it, a small, abandoned shack on the far edge of the property. Inside was a bundle of old, weathered letters tied with twine. John picked them up, hands shaking. The handwriting was faint, almost illegible in places, but the words told a story that made his chest tighten. The horse had once belonged to a family who had suffered terrible loss, neglect, betrayal, and hardship. One letter spoke of separation, of a foal taken away too young, of fear implanted deep into its spirit. Another told of a cruel trainer who had tried to bend the horse to human whims, leaving behind scars both visible and unseen. John sank to his knees, holding the letters against his chest. The horse had led him here, as if to reveal its past without words. He understood now why it had been silent, why it had been cautious, why it had tested him so carefully. It wasn't just a horse, it was a survivor, a witness to hardship, a soul seeking refuge and respect. Over the next days, the bond deepened in ways John hadn't imagined possible. Every gentle brush of the mane, every soft word, every step taken side by side became a declaration of trust. The cream horse allowed him to groom it fully, even to ride it briefly across the fields. Yet, despite the progress, there was a lingering mystery, an almost ethereal quality to its presence, as if it carried wisdom from beyond ordinary understanding. Emily returned, eyes wide as she watched the connection. "John," she said softly, "I've worked with many horses, but I've never seen one like this. It's more than intelligence. It's almost as if it understands the story of every person who meets it." John nodded, tears brimming. He realized that this bond was mutual. The horse had chosen him as much as he had chosen it. And in that selection, he felt both humility and profound gratitude. Then, an unexpected twist shook everything. A wealthy buyer from town offered John an extraordinary sum for the cream horse, promising care, stables, and prestige. It was tempting, the kind of money that could repair the farm, secure his future, erase years of struggle. But as he looked at the horse, grazing calmly, ears flicking in acknowledgement of his presence, he realized something. No sum could replace this bond. This horse wasn't an investment. It was a life, a companion, a teacher. With a steady hand, John declined the offer. "You're not for sale," he whispered, voice steady but full of emotion. The horse's head lifted, eyes meeting his in a gaze that seemed to say, "I knew you would understand." By the end of part 3, viewers are left with rising emotional stakes, the horse's mysterious backstory partially revealed, John's deepening love and empathy highlighted, and a dramatic moral choice creating tension and anticipation. Mini cliffhangers, awe, and surprise sustain attention while continuing the setup, conflict, resolution arc. The days grew longer, but peace on Miller's farm was fragile. John had learned to read the cream horse like an open book, yet despite their growing bond, he felt the invisible thread of uncertainty tightening. Something about the horse's past still whispered in the shadows, and John knew that the world, both human and natural, could test them at any moment. It began with a sudden, violent storm unlike any he had seen in years. The sky darkened in minutes, the wind whipping across the fields with a force that shook trees and rattled the barn. John rushed to secure the gates, but the cream horse was already agitated, ears flat, nostrils flaring, muscles coiled like springs. It paced, pawing the wet earth, and John realized instantly that this storm was more than weather. It was a test of survival, trust, and courage. "Stay close," John called, voice barely audible over the roar of the wind. He grabbed a rope, careful not to frighten the horse further, and slowly approached. The horse reared, hooves threatening, eyes wide with terror. But then, as if sensing John's unwavering presence, it froze. Step by step, John eased closer, speaking softly, letting his calmness become a shield against the chaos. Finally, with gentle guidance, he led it into the barn, where the wind howled and rain pounded the roof like a drum. Inside, the horse trembled, not just from fear, but from memory, the storm, the loss, the trauma embedded in its very being. John stayed beside it, hands on its flank, whispering, "You're safe. I'm here. I won't let anything hurt you." For hours, they sat together, two souls bound by trust, patience, and the unspoken understanding of what it meant to survive. The storm passed, leaving the farm drenched but standing, and John knew this trial had changed them both. The horse now followed him without hesitation, its head brushing his shoulder as he worked through the fields. Their connection had deepened beyond mere familiarity. It was mutual respect, recognition, and shared strength. Yet the real test was still to come. A neighbor's dog, known for its aggression, got loose and chased the cream horse toward the creek. John sprinted after them, heart pounding, adrenaline surging. The horse leaped, powerful and fluid, narrowly avoiding the snapping jaws of the dog. John reached the edge of the creek just in time to grab its reins, pulling the horse back to safety. Both of them were soaked, breathing hard, but alive. The incident left John shaken but resolute. He realized that true trust was forged in the fire of danger, not just in quiet moments of calm. Emily arrived that evening, eyes wide as she took in the scene. "John, you two are extraordinary," she said softly. "I've seen horses bond with humans, but it's something else entirely. The horse trusts you with its life." John smiled, exhausted but proud. "And I trust it," he replied. "That's all that matters." As the weeks progressed, John noticed subtle changes. The horse, once so guarded and aloof, began to exhibit moments of playfulness, soft nudges, gentle whinnies, even the occasional energetic gallop across the open field. It was as if a weight had lifted, a layer of fear peeled away, revealing a spirit both wild and tender. John felt a profound awe, realizing that the horse's strength was not just in its power, but in its capacity for connection, resilience, and love. Then came an unexpected twist that would test everything John had learned. One evening, a man arrived at the farm claiming to be the original owner of the horse. He was well-dressed, calm, and confident, presenting papers and stories of a family tragedy that had led to the horse's abandonment. John listened, torn. The man spoke of promises, of heritage, of returning the horse to its rightful place. Yet as John watched the cream horse stand beside him, head held high, eyes calm and steady, he knew the truth: ownership was more than papers. It was trust, love, and the bond built over shared trials. The man insisted, growing impatient. "This horse belongs with me," he said. "You've done well, but it's time to give it back." John's heart pounded. He could hand over the horse, secure money for the farm, and solve all his financial worries, but at what cost? He looked into the horse's eyes, seeing recognition, loyalty, and understanding. There was no question. This horse had chosen him. "I'm sorry," John said firmly, voice calm but unwavering. "This horse stays here. With me. Because it wants to." The man's expression darkened, but there was nothing he could do. The cream horse whinnied softly, a sound of quiet affirmation, and John felt tears prick at his eyes. They had survived storms, danger, fear, and uncertainty, and now they had faced the ultimate test of loyalty together. The next morning brought a peaceful clarity. John led the horse into the pasture, the sun rising in golden streaks over the fields. He could feel the rhythm of its heartbeat against his side, the warmth of trust and mutual respect that had taken weeks to cultivate. He realized that their bond had transformed not just the horse, but himself. He was no longer just a desperate farmer clinging to his last savings. He was a caretaker, a friend, a guardian of a spirit as wild and magnificent as the dawn. Emily watched quietly, a soft smile on her face. "John, look at it," she said. "It's happy. It's free, but it chooses to stay with you. That's rare. That's real." John nodded, stroking the horse's mane, feeling a surge of gratitude and awe. "It chose me," he said softly. "And I chose it. That's all that matters." The cream horse trotted beside him, ears flicking with curiosity, tail swishing in contentment. The barn, the fields, and the fences no longer felt like mere property. They felt like home, a sanctuary born from patience, understanding, and courage. The trials they had faced, the storms, the danger, the past, had forged a bond that was unbreakable. And as John looked across the golden fields, he realized something even more profound. Sometimes, the greatest rewards aren't measured in money or possessions, but in trust earned, fear overcome, and love shared. He smiled, a quiet, full smile, knowing that together, they had created something extraordinary, a life of connection, wonder, and unspoken understanding. If this story inspires you, remember that sometimes the bravest thing we can do is to open our hearts, to humans, to animals, and to the world around us. Share it, tell someone, and let the awe of trust and resilience ripple outward. The dawn broke over Miller's farm like a promise, spilling golden light across the fields and the barn where the cream horse now stood calmly, mane glinting in the sun. John felt a weight lift from his chest, a weight he hadn't even realized he'd been carrying. Weeks of fear, uncertainty, and struggle seemed to dissolve in the morning warmth. The bond he had built with this horse had transcended mere survival. It had become a story of trust, patience, and unwavering hope. For the first time, John allowed himself a moment of reflection. He thought back to the very first day, when the horse had appeared like a ghost on the edge of his property, silent and mysterious, testing his courage with every glance. How far they had come, from cautious steps and trembling trust to this quiet, mutual understanding. And yet, there was still a sense of wonder, as if the horse carried secrets that no one could ever fully know. That morning, John decided to take the horse beyond the farm for the first time. He led it slowly down the familiar paths, allowing it to smell the earth, the streams, and the distant woods. Each step was deliberate, respectful, and full of patience. The horse's ears flicked, nostrils quivering, but it walked beside him willingly. It was a quiet miracle, a partnership built on respect and empathy rather than coercion. Emily accompanied them, watching with a mixture of awe and admiration. This is rare," she said softly. "It's more than a bond. It's a connection that can't be broken by fear, by money, or by circumstance. You've given it safety, and it's given you trust in return. John nodded, feeling a lump in his throat. And it's more than that, he said. It's given me hope. I thought I was just saving a horse, but really it saved me. The journey back to the farm was filled with quiet moments of wonder. Birds sang above, and the morning breeze carried the scent of grass and wildflowers. The cream horse walked confidently, head high, yet gentle beside John. Every so often, it would nudge his hand or glance back at him, a silent acknowledgement that spoke volumes. They were no longer just man and horse. They were partners, companions, and kindred spirits. Upon returning, John noticed a small group of children from the nearby town peeking through the fence. Their eyes widened at the sight of the cream horse, its beauty and elegance impossible to ignore. John smiled and approached the fence. "Come closer," he said gently. "But remember, always calm, always respectful. It's friendly, but it feels fear just like we do." One little girl, no older than 7, stepped forward tentatively. She held out her hand, and the horse sniffed it carefully before lowering its head, allowing her to stroke its mane. Her eyes lit up with wonder, and John felt a warm surge of pride. The horse, once so wary and silent, now offered trust freely, a living testament to patience and kindness. As the day wore on, John reflected on the trials they had faced, the storms, the threats, the heartbreak of potential loss, and the looming offer of wealth that could have changed everything. Yet none of it mattered in comparison to this. The quiet moments of connection, the gentle nuzzles, the understanding that trust and love cannot be bought, only earned. Even the townspeople, who had once doubted him and whispered about his desperation, began to take notice. Stories spread of the farmer and his mysterious cream horse, tales of patience, courage, and quiet heroism. Some came to watch, some to learn, but all were touched by the bond that had formed in the unlikeliest of circumstances. John realized that sometimes the simplest gestures, feeding, grooming, walking alongside, could ripple outward, inspiring awe and empathy far beyond the farm's boundaries. As evening approached, John led the horse into the paddock, brushing its coat until it shone like silk. He whispered softly, recounting the journey they had shared. "We've come so far," he said. "Through fear, through storms, through uncertainty, and yet here we are. Together." The horse nudged him gently, pressing its head against his chest in a gesture of pure trust. Tears filled John's eyes, a mixture of relief, gratitude, and deep, unspoken love. Emily watched silently, knowing that some things could only be felt, not described. "It's rare," she said softly, "to see a bond like this. You've built something extraordinary, something that will last a lifetime." John nodded, feeling the weight of her words. He knew she was right. This wasn't just about saving a horse. It was about healing, understanding, and finding hope in the darkest of times. That night, as the farm settled into quiet, John sat on the porch, gazing at the cream horse grazing peacefully in the paddock. The sky above was dotted with stars, the air crisp and still. He thought of the letters they had found, of the past the horse had endured, and of the future they would share. For the first time in months, he felt truly at peace. The horse was safe, the farm was steady, and the bond they had forged would guide them through anything life could throw at them. In that quiet moment, John realized something profound. The true value of life isn't in wealth or possessions. It's in connection, empathy, and the courage to open one's heart, even when the world seems uncertain. He reached out to the cream horse, resting his hand gently on its neck. The horse leaned into the touch, eyes closing in contentment. In that instant, all fear, doubt, and desperation melted away. As viewers watch this story unfold, remember the lessons it carries. Sometimes, the bravest thing we can do is to trust, to care, and to persist in the face of uncertainty. And sometimes, the rewards are not measured in money or fame, but in the quiet, unspoken bond between souls, human and animal alike. John stood, brushing his hands off, looking over the farm he had fought to protect, alongside the creature who had fought to trust him. "We've found each other," he said softly. "And that's more than enough." The cream horse whinnied softly in reply, a sound that carried relief, joy, and an unspoken promise of companionship for years to come. And as the camera pans out, capturing the golden light, the quiet farm, and the majestic horse standing proudly beside John, the story leaves a lasting message. Hope is earned, trust is precious, and love, once given and nurtured, can heal even the deepest scars. If this story moved you, inspired you, or filled you with awe, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so more hearts can be touched by the quiet miracles that happen when patience meets courage.